I want us to look at a book here in the Bible that, now God didn't say this, but people have classified it through time. They've got to put a label on it. It doesn't make it entirely wrong or right, but it's just a book that they classify as the happiest book in the Bible, kind of a peculiar phrase. But they coined it as the happiest book in the Bible. And so we're going to look and we're going to have a little bit of an overview of this book this morning in the New Testament. It's the book of Philippians. And some have coined it as the happiest book in the Bible. And I don't know specifically why some have coined it that, other than it may have been because of the theme of this book. Now, granted, in these 4 chapters, it does mention joy and rejoice 16 times. So that's quite a few times in 4 chapters to talk about joy and rejoice. And yet this morning, I want you to know that the joy and the rejoicing is based off the theme of this book. And the theme of this book, and others can vary this, but what I believe the Lord's bringing to our attention this morning is the theme of this book is contentment. Now, you know, for some of us, contentment, that word we just look as a dangerous word in the sense that I'm a doer, I'm a worker, I'm a pusher, I'm a guy who says we're going to go with 2 services, we're not going to go to one, you know, that kind of thing, referring to my announcement earlier of where I was at on going to 1 service starting next Sunday, which is at what time? 9:30 next Sunday. We'll be going to 1 service for a while, getting everybody together if you missed that announcement. And so, you know, we hear the word contentment, and some of us view it as this dangerous bridge to the land of laziness. And I want you to know that is not what true contentment is at all. You're going to see this morning as we look at the Apostle Paul, who wrote under the inspiration of the Spirit about gratitude and contentment and not allowing circumstances to displace that which most important that Christ has given us, and that from that there is a gratitude and contentment come, you know, difficult situations, come hell itself or high water or disaster or times of ease. Those things are never supposed to dismantle gratitude and contentment and what the Lord has done in our life. So it's interesting that here is this book of Philippians, this letter from Paul, and he writes about gratitude, he writes about contentment and the kingdom perspective on this. He uses Christ as an example. He talks about his qualifications and disqualifications. And he goes through this and exemplifies this faith that is out of contentment and gratitude. And he does it, get this, the happiest book of the Bible was actually written by a man who was in prison. Now, what does that say to us? It gets me to hopefully look at myself and go, ooh, all these discomfort places, all of these places of frustration, hindrance, or I just can't get free from this, or somebody won't give me the freedom to do this, or say this, or be this, or just, you know, if I only had, then I could, you know, those kind of things. And yet, and those things rob us of our joy, it robs us of rejoicing, it robs us of our soulish health as a person, and, you know, we start to think, poor me, or what if, and why can't, and how come, and this is somebody else's fault, or I did this to myself, I'm no good, or whatever the excuses are. And listen, Paul writes and says, hey, listen, whether this turns out the way you hope and pray, or whether it doesn't, should not dismantle gratitude and contentment in our life. You see, we can get caught chasing other things. Yet, the most important thing that you and I could ever have has been already given to us. why would we go and chase something that's second best or third best? You see, what's it say here in Philippians? I want you to look at this, chapter 1. I'm just going to overview and pull out a few verses, and I'm going to be sensitive to the time we have. And so this may not be the full message, but the message will still come through compared to first service. That was a little bit longer message. So Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. Listen, Paul says, I'm sure of this. Now pause here. Don't just watch this. Now here's the Apostle Paul. If you know about him, we kind of respect him and his faith, where he came from, the transition of his life because of his encounter with Christ, and that he wrote most of the New Testament, and, he was an apostle of Jesus, and all that he went through and committed even to the giving of his life for the sake of the gospel. When a man like that, a person like that says, I'm sure of this, we should go, oh, that carries some credentials with it. If this person's sure of this, I want to hear what they're sure of. And he writes this, I am sure of this, that he, God, who began a good work in you, point at the person next to you. I know it's not polite, but just say you up there in the booth. Somebody please point at me. Okay, thanks. He's sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. He's going to finish it. He's going to do that. He's going to complete it at the day of Jesus Christ. Now, we've heard that verse. But I want you to hear the promise in it. No one, not Satan himself, is able to stop God from completing the work he has begun in you until the day of Jesus. The only person that can stop it is you. Me. I can choose. I can choose to shut it down. I can choose to chase something else. I can dismantle contentment and gratitude and security and peace in what the Lord has promised to do by chasing something else and making it first. Even then, his Spirit contends with us, strives with us, tries to transform our heart. But Paul, here he is in prison, and he writes the happiest book of the Bible. Exemplary, understanding this promise of God, understanding that circumstances don't get to dictate his contentment or his gratitude, even when things aren't going his way. He's not chasing security somewhere else. He's not chasing something else. In the context of more, whatever that is in your life, more money, more house, more vehicles, more notoriety, more opportunity. Now listen, we live in this world. Nothing wrong with you putting an addition on your house. Nothing wrong if you want a different vehicle or need a first vehicle or, you can, whatever things there are, you want promotion at work. I mean, there's nothing wrong with those things until that we chase those things to the point that it dismantles the foundation of contentment in God. In other words, I can be content being third in line to the CEO as much as I can be content if I'm number 9 or number 1. I am the CEO. There's contentment, that there is this underlying foundation of contentment in our life that circumstances have nothing to do with. Paul is in prison. And he writes the happiest book of the Bible because it comes out of gratitude and contentment that transcends circumstance. I don't know what you feel imprisoned by or hindered by or confined by or whoever fault it is, your own or blaming somebody else or whatever it is, that it has robbed you of the joy, rejoicing. It's robbed you of contentment. We can still strive and we can still labor and we can still work. But the moment the frustration of not succeeding like you hoped or the plans didn't go your way, the moment that robs contentment and gratitude, we have displaced it. And it's no one else's fault but mine. That happens in my life. Contentment and gratitude transcend circumstances or trial. You know, the interesting thing about tried faith, it brings experience. Here's a beautiful thing about being old. Let me rephrase that. Older than I used to be. Here's a beauty about being older in the Lord, knowing the Lord for a length of time. Here's a beauty, is it provides experience that hopefully makes me wiser, that a younger man, person, woman who's walked with the Lord less time, they can know things that I don't know because their journey with Him is different. But there are things that I have known through time, not because I've been around long, but because Him in my life, He's allowed me to get to know Him better than I used to. And so it changes my mind and the way I look at things, and it builds, hopefully, biblical God-nature foundations in my life. Now, here's the thing. I'm not done yet. And I'm not putting myself above anybody else in this room. He's completing the work He started in me. There's a work of His character that is common for all of us. It is His good pleasure. But then there are specific things for my life that are different than your life. Don't compromise character, but it's opportunity, it's purpose, it's mission. Those things can vary. Paul's here and he's in jail, and he writes about contentment. Not as laziness, just sit back and, well, I just need to be satisfied with what is. It's about the contentment of what God has purchased and given to you. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? What does it profit a woman to gain the whole world and lose her own soul? What does it profit you? You see, what are we chasing that dismantles gratitude and contentment in our life? In Matthew 6, Jesus, he says this. This is just a marvelous teaching. You're acquainted with it, okay? But he talks about this. It's in verse 25. He says, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? I want you to hear this. Other than God and what He has made a way for you and I, if we are chasing anything else as first place opposed to that robs us of contentment and gratitude, I want you to know that thing is what pagans chase. People who don't have faith in Christ chase. And if we profess Christ, then there's an inconsistency that I need to look at in my life. It doesn't make things wrong that we buy or want or whatever, but the moment that it doesn't happen and it robs us of gratitude and contentment, it's a sign that we got a problem. We got a problem in here. Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap, nor gather into barns like we do. Yet our Heavenly Father takes care of them. It's not about that we shouldn't work or labor. All that we do should glorify God, but the pursuit of things, or the whatever more is in your life, shouldn't become the foundation of how we feel and determine our happiness and determine our gratitude or our frustration. Contentment and gratitude should be the foundation of what God has purchased for us and given us, because there's nothing in this life that is more important than what he has done for you and I. He says this, if he takes care of them, are you not more valuable than the birds of the air? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his lifespan? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon, dressed in his glory, had no comparison to what God does. He clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today, and tomorrow it's thrown in the fire. How much more will he clothe you? And then he says this, oh, you of little faith. Therefore, don't be anxious, saying we shall eat or we shall drink or what we're going to wear. He says the pagans, those who don't know God, the Gentiles, they're the ones that chase and seek after all these things. Your Heavenly Father already knows what you need, so seek his kingdom first. All this other stuff will be added unto you. Don't be anxious about tomorrow. For tomorrow, anxiety can wait till then. Today has enough challenge of its own. To maintain the attitude that Paul writes about in having gratitude and contentment in our life. You see, he writes about this kingdom perspective. Watch this in Philippians chapter 1, verse 12. He says, I want you to know that what has happened to me, being in prison, when he's writing this, what's happened to me, he says, has really served to advance the gospel. Kingdom perspective. That his hardship in prison, instead of woe is me and how'd this happen and oh God, hear my prayer and get me out of here. And I'm sure he's praying to get out. The saints, he addresses them and says, hey, thanks for your prayers. And I believe the Lord's going to, deliver me and get me out of this. That's what his faith says. But he's not letting the present circumstance dictate his contentment. You watch what he writes. He's got this kingdom perspective that says, because I'm in here, I think the gospel's advanced because I'm in here. He is putting the kingdom perspective, that which is most important, that God has purchased him and given to him, and God's good pleasure and will is being carried out, and the gospel's advancing because people's souls and their lives in eternity is way more important than his temporary pain or inconvenience. What a perspective! I'm in prison, I don't like it, we're praying to get me out. However, because I'm in here, I think the gospel's advanced. So he writes, I want you to know, brothers, what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest of my imprisonment is for Christ. He says, because I'm in here, and people are hearing about I'm in here because of what I'm suffering for the sake of Christ, it's actually gotten people's attention that the gospel could spread, the good news of the gospel. That Jesus provides a peace and security and a stability in my life that transcends my imprisonment, the discomfort, the suffering, the difficulties of this life. What if I had the same attitude? What if you had the same attitude into your circumstances, into your life? Said, because I'm going through this, and I hold to contentment and peace and what God has purchased me, that those around me watch me go through this. And if I do this right, if I let God sustain me and I don't let these circumstances dethrone my gratitude and contentment, they're going to go, it's going to get their attention. That Jesus is upholding you, that your faith is upholding you. Because their life, they've got trials, difficulties, and all of that, and they're searching and racing and looking for answers. And now they get to see their answer in you. See, if you weren't in it, you wouldn't have an audience. You ever think about that? No, because it's just about me and how I feel and what I think, and am I getting ahead and am I getting what I'm chasing? No. We go through it, and God gives us an audience. And if we get our eyes off ourselves, and we stay on the page of gratitude and contentment, whether things work out the way we want or they don't, people see us go through it. And they get to watch your faith or lack of faith. Your kids watch you. Mom, dad, go through whatever it is. What have they seen? What have they heard from your prison? Yeah, all of us have a lot to learn about it. Paul, we get to see it. One of the fathers of our faith, so to speak. We get to watch. We get glimpses of how he has a kingdom perspective from his prison and writes what becomes known as the happiest book of the Bible. You see, he's in prison, and yet the gospel advances. I want you to hear this. No prison, no trial, no difficulty in our life has the power to stop the gospel from being spread, unless you and I choose to shut it down in our life and search for another answer or another thing instead of the primary pinnacle thing that we could ever find in this life, and that is Jesus Christ himself, his salvation, his good pleasure, and his will in us. You see, that's the gospel being alive in us and others. Sorry, I'm glancing at the clock. I want to be respectful, but I also want to give this message. So I'm going to fast forward here just a little bit in this overview, and we're going to get to some other chapter here in a couple verses as I close. Chapter 3, verse 2, Paul writes, he says, look out for the dogs. Can you say look out? Come on, look out. Look out. It's an alarm. Hey, look out. He didn't write it, look out. He was like, look out for the dogs. Still the same verse, and he says again, look out for the evildoers. Third time, one verse. 3 times he says, look out. Look out for those who mutilate the flesh. Basically what he's saying is, watch out for false teachers, watch out for false doctrine, because in the moment of your difficulty, if you don't understand gratitude and contentment and what God has promised, and that it should transcend that which we face, you're going to start chasing for some other thing to save you. Some philosophy. You're going to want more from something. He says, you look out for the deception. Look out for the dogs. Look out for the evildoers. Look out for those who mutilate the flesh. When he says mutilate the flesh, he was talking about religious movements that were happening where people, they were being taught that you're supposed to hate every carnal pleasure in this life. Now, carnal pleasure, when we hear it, we think sin, which is true. But there are also carnal pleasures that have been given us to this life that are appropriate, that aren't sinful. Do you like food? Do you love pizza? I mean, not like I love people, but I mean, I love pizza. There's things that we can enjoy in this life and still be holy, be followers of him. There was a teaching that said you have to totally hate yourself, hate every good thing in this life, everything, because then you will be good enough for heaven. It's works-based. Paul goes into the whole teaching. He talks about Jesus, who was holy, left where he was, came to us. Paul talks about how he is so qualified, all his titles, all his accomplishments, and yet at the end of that, he says, but none of them, even the law can't save me. He said, it's not my righteousness. It is the righteousness of Jesus Christ, which is by faith. By faith. See, this is the good news of the gospel, because you and I can never measure up. You can't oppress yourself enough. You can't obtain the law enough. You can't obey. Hate that. He says we can't do that. But Jesus is the fulfillment. And his righteousness becomes ours when we put faith in him. That's why he came, to take our place, to die on a cross, that his blood would be shed, his pure blood, to forgive my life. I could have died on the cross, but my blood is sinful. It won't matter. It will not give me salvation. That's what God has given us. And yet we chase for other answers. We chase for some other pleasure. We chase for some other achievement. He goes through here. I'm going to encourage you to read the whole book of Philippians. It's 4 chapters. He says, listen, don't give way to rivalry and conceit, but consider others in their way of life, and consider their life, and consider them better than you. Rivalry is works of the flesh. That is not contentment. It doesn't come out of gratitude. Conceit surely doesn't. What are we chasing that's supposed to be so much more important and satisfying than what Christ has already given us? In your circumstance, situation, I don't know all the details of it. I don't know all your past. I don't know all those things. I just know mine. I want you to know that none of those things, past, present, or future challenges, should dictate my contentment and gratitude. Because the things of this world, they're going to pass away. But eternity is eternity. That doesn't pass away. And he has made a way for you. And he's going to finish his work in you. Why don't you go ahead and stand up, please? Chapter 3, here's a key that he gives us. You think, how do I do this? Here's a little key to get you in the right direction. He says this. Verse 12. It's not that I've already obtained this or am already perfect, but I press on to make it my own because Christ Jesus has made me his own. Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, I forget what is behind me. I forget. I don't let those things of the past influence me anymore that have robbed my contentment and my gratitude. He says this, if you're going to put effort towards anything, press on to the high calling, that which God has for us. For he says God is working his good pleasure and his will in you. How frustrating it must be for God, who wants to work his good pleasure and his will in you and I, and we're chasing something else. Something that dismantled our gratitude and our contentment. It's a beautiful thing to be content and still labor. Paul writes about it. In this book, he states very clearly, I believe that I'm going to overcome and be released. And then he says this, however, if I don't and I die here, I'm good with it. Why? Because he's grateful and content. He says, if I live, I can continue to labor for the gospel. if I don't, to die is gain. To live is Christ, to die is gain. See, when we come from the point of gratitude and contentment, not dictated by circumstances, we win either way. But when we don't come from gratitude and contentment, and we're chasing or looking or trying or frustrated, we're trying to, I want you to know we lose both ways. And the thing is, we forfeited it because Christ has already purchased you. He's made a way for you and I. I'm going to close with this. He says this, let those of us who are mature think like this. And if any of you think anything other than this, then God will reveal it to you. Let us hold true to what we have attained. Hold true to what Christ has given you. And don't let your circumstance, situation rob you of gratitude and contentment to the point that you're chasing something else in its place. You can chase and you can pursue, and there's nothing wrong with it until it becomes first over gratitude and contentment. You want to have peace in your soul? You want to be free in here? You want chains broken from all the stuff we've entangled ourselves or the world's philosophies or what we've fallen prey to? You want to be free? Then let him come with the key, unlock it, and shed the chains of ingratitude and a lack of contentment. You want peace of soul? Gratitude and contentment. Work. Work hard. Work smart. But if it doesn't pan out, pray. If it doesn't pan out like you want and it goes a different direction, don't let it dethrone contentment and gratitude. Because now we forfeited. We have given ourselves over to our own desire, our own way, and we get lost and we get entangled. He says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. There's a sincerity to it. There's a seriousness to it. And once we work it out, it's not up for a vote again. Oh, I committed to Christ, things got okay, things got good, now things got tough. I should search for another way, or, oh, I should do through this, it ain't working out, poor me, oh, no, oh, it's so bad. No, that is not going to determine my gratitude and contentment. Because Christ has given me the best thing I could ever find in this life. Himself, salvation, grace, mercy, all of those things. I don't want to forfeit them by chasing something else. I want you to bow your head with me, please, all over this room. This life's hard. It's difficult. We can get entangled in ways we never dreamed. It's interesting, how strong we think we are. We never realize how weak we are until we get into the river of trouble and we realize our limitations. At that moment, it should really get our attention. When we're starting to become somebody because of we're starting to become somebody that God didn't intend, somebody that we don't even like. We're becoming listen, it's because we've lost the foundation of what He's done and His mercy, His ability to uphold us, His promise to finish us, and we bail. We start becoming something we're not supposed to be. When you start to see that, read the happiest book in the Bible. Read Philippians. And let the nature of Christ come. What He's done to bring gratitude and contentment into who you are. And that you would exercise its power over circumstances of this life. Randy, you don't know what I've been through. You're right. I'm not in your shoes. Won't pretend to be. Let's remember what Christ went through for us. He's made a way. You and I can start becoming the person that brings him pleasure, the person he intended us to be in this dark world, that he could shine brightly in you and through you. See, it's God's purpose that he'd give you an audience, that people would see in you the nature of Jesus. Don't get restless in your heart. Get to know him. Walk with him. Make your faith real in real issues of this life.